friends, Andrew here, hope you're well. Historically, Apple tends to launch new Mac models around the end of the year, almost every single year since 2008. But thanks to chip shortages and supply chain issues, the brand new MacBook Pro M2 lineup has finally launched at the start of the year, and I decided to buy one. Although we're not getting the transformative changes we saw in 2021, I wouldn't be so quick to rule out this upgrade, and it's not just the chips that have changed. There's more to the M2 Pro, and Apple has done some useful tinkering this year. After spending over a week with it since launch, let's go over what's new, if the spec bumps are worth the price tag, how it stacks up to my other MacBooks I use on a daily basis, and my overall honest opinion of whether this new MacBook is worth it and who should upgrade. So I decided to buy the M2 Max variant in the 14-inch size for a few reasons here. For starters, I've said this plenty in previous reviews, and I'll say it again, in my opinion, the 14-inch size is the Goldilocks sweet spot between screen usability and on-the-go portability for most users. If you work at a desk and do any sort of travel or remote work, the 14-inch size is such a pleasure to work with. 13-inch laptops are a little too small for any serious work, while the 15-inch is slightly inconvenient to regularly travel with, let alone the 16-inch or larger. By the way, I'll drop a link to this new wallpaper bundle in the link below if you're interested. I opted for the M2 Max chip because I'll be using this machine to power my entire creative workflow, and for me personally, this configuration has the benefit of being a one device fits all approach in that I use it both docked at a desk and portably, so I don't need a separate desktop machine, a Mac Pro or a Mac Mini, for example. There is no denying though that the price is absolutely eye-watering, with this configuration setting me back $3,099 without any additional upgrades or add-ons. Most people are going to need a good reason to justify this sort of purchase. Before I jump into the chip performance, there's a few other new additions to this year's MacBook Pro lineup. They're minor but worthwhile improvements that should be pointed out. Arguably the most important change outside of the M2 chips is the updated HDMI 2.1 port, which now supports one 8K monitor up to 60Hz refresh rate or a 4K monitor up to a super fast 240Hz refresh rate. Previously on the 2021 MacBook Pro models, I noticed some viewers weren't too impressed with the HDMI 2.0 port, which supported a single 4K display with a refresh rate of up to 60Hz. So the inclusion of HDMI 2.1 is welcome and genuinely useful. I mean, it beats out my new CalDigit TS4 dock, which is capable of up to 144Hz on 4K resolution. So this HDMI 2.1 upgrade is genuinely useful to power users who need the best of the best. And I believe VRR, variable refresh rate, is now supported as part of the HDMI port upgrade, but I'll report back on this in my long-term review. We also get the inclusion of Wi-Fi 6E, which enables faster speeds if you have the infrastructure to support it, and in addition, Bluetooth 5.3, which basically adds stability, security, and efficiency to your Bluetooth connection. Nice to have, but no noticeable difference day to day. It's also worth highlighting that the 16-inch MacBook Pro with the M2 Pro and M2 Max chips have an improved battery life of up to 22 hours of media playback, which is the longest battery life yet. The 14-inch here gets 18 hours of battery life, and the 13-inch actually gets a further 20 hours. On a cosmetic level, this year we get the inclusion of a color-matched MagSafe cable, similar to what we've seen with the new MacBook Airs. So if you get the space gray color like I have here, you'll now get a space gray MagSafe cable to match. It's a nice small touch, and space gray still remains the best color. Convince me otherwise. Moving on to the most important and biggest change here, which is the M2 Pro and Max processors. The M2 Max has a transistor count of 67 billion, whereas the M2 Pro has 40 billion. Mind-boggling numbers, and most of the extra transistors are dedicated to increased graphics performance, but here's what I noticed. From immediate impressions after setting up my new MacBook Pro M2, it's obviously really fast, but there's no noticeable improvement over my M1 Pro when it comes to opening apps website tabs, and general day-to-day use, both the M1 Pro and M2 Air have an adequate amount of punch to handle daily tasks no problem at all. The increase in RAM, though, is a game changer. So in the M2, Apple addressed one of the biggest failings of the M1 processor, limited RAM capacity of 16 gigabytes, which saw RAM hogging apps like, Google Chrome and Spotify noticeably sluggish at times. The reason for this is because apps like Chrome and Spotify run on a framework called Electron, a popular cross-platform system that is appealing to developers for its versatility and ease of use. I often find myself having to pay attention to how many apps I have running at any given time and closing unused apps, which is probably a good habit to get into anyway. So Apple has increased RAM capacity to 32 gigabytes and also increased memory bandwidth to 200 gigabytes per second, meaning the fast processor now has an equally fast way of talking to the other components, making the new M2 Pro and Max chips more efficient. It seems to have helped relieve pressure on the system over the last couple weeks. If I have more than 6 apps and loads of Chrome tabs open, which is very often the case, it's pretty smooth, or smoother than usual. Of course, you could also just use non-Electron apps such as Safari instead of Chrome and Apple Music instead of Spotify, as these apps, unsurprisingly, perform more efficiently on Macs. And even a more noticeable improvement on this MacBook Pro M2 Max machine is seen when I use more demanding apps in my workflow, which include Final Cut Pro, Figma, Lightroom, and Photoshop. I've yet to see a single hiccup, even when I'm working on video projects that fill up my entire 4TB SSD, or working on large 100 megabyte plus photos on Lightroom or Photoshop. Things that would usually make my M2 Air stutter, or even sometimes my M1 Pro. And it's these exact moments that make the investment worthwhile for power users. It saved me seconds, if not minutes, every day, potentially dealing with a sluggish machine. And for anyone that requires this type of power, such as, developers using Xcode, video editors using DaVinci Resolve, or a 3D animator using Blender, you're the target segment the M2 Max is designed for. And to maintain top tier performance, Clean My Mac X is an app I use to keep my new Macs in its best possible shape, and they're today's video sponsor. Clean My Mac X has been around for 14 years and is notarized by Apple. It's essentially a powerful cleaning tool purposefully designed to keep Macs squeaky clean and running at full capacity. It does an awesome job clearing gigabytes worth of unused gunk from my Macs by clearing up RAM, disk space, redundant files, and more with a single click right here. It also keeps malware, adware, and ransomware at bay through the malware removal tool, and the uninstaller tool here is also a must use to correctly uninstall apps and remove associated files. If you want to go above and beyond, click on the assistant here for personalized recommendations to truly spring clean your Mac. By taking care of your Mac, its lifespan is maximized and it's able to run responsively for longer, so we can focus on, enjoying our devices. I've been using Clean My Mac X for a while now, and you can go ahead and get a discount by downloading the app in the link in the description box below. So moving on, here is how the Apple M2 Max stacked up against my M2 Air and M1 Pro in Geekbench 5. The M2 Max chip scored 1,965 single core and pumped out a very impressive 14,929 multi-core. The GPU test scored 63,811, which is awfully close to the M1 Ultra's GPU performance. Meanwhile, the M2 Air scored 7,651 multi-core CPU and 23,011 for the GPU, and the M1 Pro scored 12,151 for the CPU and 37,863 for the GPU. So unsurprisingly, the M2 Max leads the pack by far for top-end performance, especially when it comes to multi-core usage. It just holds so much more power, arguably too much power to know what to do with. Both the M1 Pro and M2 Air still hold their ground though, and support the fact that these laptops are still stellar buys, and unless you're planning to push your laptop to its brink, the M1 Pro, M2 Air are just devices with enough juice for most people. When it comes to its design, you can see here that it's exactly identical to the 14-inch 2021 MacBook Pro. That's fine by me. It's a design that currently works and was only recently updated. We still have the gorgeous mini LED display with the controversial notch, which houses the 1080p camera, a beautiful black inset keyboard that is still a joy to type on, and of course features the useful Touch ID button built in. Then the Epic speakers are still epic. Its 6-speaker sound system, which includes 4 force-canceling woofers and 2 tweeters, is powerful enough to fill a medium-sized room with quality sound. So all the hallmarks of what made the redesigned M1 Pro are still here, and that's a good thing. But truth be told, the new upper range MacBook Pros are simply too expensive and too powerful for the everyday user to get their money's worth out of. Yes, it is one of, if not the most powerful laptops on the market right now, but unless you've got, good reason to take advantage of it, then you're simply left with bragging rights only. So I think naturally there are better alternatives to the M2 Pro and Max for most people. A refurbished MacBook M1 Max from Apple's certified refurbished store can be bought for a fraction of the price of a new M2 Max at $2,379 right here. So even if you are a power user, an M1 Max represents great value for money because there's not much more the M1 Max can't handle at this moment in time. If you're more of a casual user, using your laptop for only, documents, web browsing, light editing, or coding, then the MacBook M2 Air is still one of my favorite laptops at a little over $1,000 only. I still love reaching for it whenever I have the luxury of an easier workday that doesn't include intensive apps. The bottom line is, and what I can say for sure, is whatever you throw at the MacBook Pro M2 Max, it will slice through with ease. If you want the best of the best portable power in the Apple ecosystem, this is it. The only thing that's more powerful currently using Apple Silicon is the Mac Studio desk setups with the M1 Ultra chip, which is basically 2 M1 Max chips in one. And there's likely going to be a new dual M2 Max chip in the Mac Studio this year, which I'll likely buy and review too. Make sure you subscribe to be the first one to see my review on it. And yeah, overall, this Pro M2 Max, it's a very nice top tier performance bump, but Apple will need to make bigger moves in the future to stay ahead of the competition because Intel and AMD will catch up unless Apple surprises us with a revolutionary M3 chip. And I'm looking forward to what Apple does next. But whether you genuinely need all this power is a question for you. And if you're on the fence, then I'll leave my review of the already incredibly powerful MacBook Pro M1 Pro right here for you to check out. And if you made it to the end of this video, drop the code word comment MacBook Maximum and I'll give it a like. Don't forget to like if you enjoy this video and sub if you want to see more tech and lifestyle content from me. As always, thank you for watching and I'll see you in the next video.